It is time for our Week 7 college football Saturday selections. We have an absolutely loaded slate of games on the menu for this Saturday, so let's waste no time and get right into things with a noon Eastern kickoff over on Fox as it's the Red River rivalry game as the Oklahoma Sooners are a 10.5 point favorite against the Texas Longhorns. A couple of interesting tidbits to keep in mind. The last 2 years, their regular season matchups between these two teams have come down to the final play. Also, Texas has had a tendency to cover the number in the regular season matchups they've had against the Sooners. I believe the last 6 times during the regular season they've covered. So those are some things to file away. But in regards to what I've seen from these teams so far this season, Oklahoma has been really good, and I think they are every part of the potential national title contender some people have them as. That said, though, they haven't really played anybody yet this year. Their best games were against Oklahoma's best games were against Houston, UCLA, Texas Tech, and Kansas. This Texas team, especially their offense, is going to provide a whole nother type of challenge for this Sooners team that a lot of people think has slightly improved on the defensive side of the football. That said, I also think this Texas offense, has Sam Ehlinger. The receiving group is great. Colin Johnson's expected back for this game after missing some time due to an injury he suffered against LSU. And also their running game with Keontae Ingram leading the charge has been formidable. So I think Texas's offense is going to match up very well with Oklahoma's offense. These teams look pretty evenly matched. I'm not ready to say this game is a must-win for either side. I think, though, if both these teams want to continue controlling their own destiny in terms of a Big 12 title and the potential playoff spot, then yes, they have to win this game. I just think it's going to be a fantastic football game. I'm really excited to watch it play out. I think, though, that it comes down to the fact that this Oklahoma team, you have head coach Lincoln Riley and quarterback Jalen Hurts, they look so determined and focused to make amends for the past few years where they've fallen short at Alabama and at Oklahoma respectively. And I think they come out motivated to prove something to people. So I'm going to go Oklahoma in a really close football game. I like the Sooners 33-30 on Saturday afternoon. Continuing on with another noon Eastern kickoff. This one's over on ESPN as the South Carolina Gamecocks are a 24.5 point underdog as they travel to Athens, Georgia to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. This is an interesting SEC East collision. Last week, of course, Georgia and Tennessee. And coming into that game, what I said was this Georgia team has a tendency not to blow other teams out. They kind of get up early, and they just let their rushing game and their defense bring it home. That's pretty much what happened against Tennessee. The only reason Georgia covered in that game was they picked up a key block from an official on a fumble return late in the fourth quarter that ended up getting them the cover in that game. Now, focusing on this one, I kind of think it plays out like that game did. Georgia's going to get up early. Looks like they didn't get up early against Tennessee, but they're going to get up, by the third quarter, and then their defense and running game will just bring it home. I don't think Georgia blows out South Carolina. Now, one kind of concern I have about the Gamecocks is they haven't been great in terms of time of possession this season, but I do think Ryan Helinski having the bye week to help recover from the elbow injury he had will benefit the Gamecocks a bit. And this is just a solid South Carolina team. They're better than Tennessee. Now, the Gamecocks aren't great or good, but they're not bad. They're pretty average, and I think they can hold their own against Georgia in terms of not getting blown out like other teams don't. So I'm going to go Georgia at home, but only by a score of 31-10. I think South Carolina covers the 24.5. Jumping ahead now to another SEC collision. This one's over in the SEC West as the Alabama Crimson Tide are a 16.5 point favorite as they travel to Kyle Field in College Station to take on the Texas A&M Aggies. It is a 3:30 Eastern kickoff over on CBS. Well, this game to me comes down to the fact that while this Alabama defense hasn't quite been what we've come to expect under head coach Nick Saban, Texas A&M's offense is just too one-dimensional to go up against the Nick Saban-led defense. Now, Kellen Mond, the Texas A&M quarterback, has had a lot put onto his plate this season after Texas A&M running back Deshaun Corbin got hurt really early on in the season. But that said, the A&M rushing attack after his injury hasn't really been able to find their rhythm, and that's really brought down this entire offense. So I think really for A&M to have any chance in this football game, their defense is going to have to create takeaways. And Alabama's offense so far hasn't turned the ball over much. And I think for those reasons, I like the Crimson Tide over the Texas A&M Aggies by a score of 33-14. Continuing on now with another 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one's over on the Big Ten Network as the Michigan State Spartans travel to Madison to take on the Wisconsin Badgers, who are a 10.5-point favorite. Well, for me, this game's going to come down to the fact that Michigan State's coming off of that emotional primetime game against Ohio State, where their defense did a good job of hanging in that game. They had a rough second quarter, but beyond that, they were respectable. But you have to wonder, are they going to be worn down both physically and emotionally if their offense is not able to run the football against a really good Wisconsin rush defense? Because if Michigan State can't run the football, I worry that Wisconsin and their ground game, led by Jonathan Taylor, a Heisman contender at running back, is just going to have too much time on the field, and that by the time this game reaches the late third quarter, early fourth, that Michigan State's defense, after that game last week and after being worn down early in this one, they're just going to be too physically beaten to finish the job. And I think Wisconsin scores a late touchdown as a result. So I like the Badgers at home to win this football game by a score of 23-10. Another 3:30 Eastern kickoff. This one's over on ABC as two ACC Atlantic rivals have at it in Death Valley, South Carolina, as the Florida State Seminoles are a 27-point underdog against the Clemson Tigers. Well, this game for me, you have Brent Venables, the Clemson defensive coordinator, who loves to blitz. And you have a Florida State offensive line that, while they've been marginally improving, aren't quite where you want to be going up against a blitz-happy Brent Venables team. So that is a big concern for me, that Florida State's shaky offensive line is really going to be put to the test by this Clemson defense. Also, I'm a bit concerned by the fact that this Clemson team has been listening throughout their bye week about how North Carolina almost beat them. They should have beat them. And that they're no longer one of the teams at the top of the national conversation for a playoff spot. They seem to have fallen out of everybody's top four. And that's just something I think this team has been listening to. And they're going to come out in this game focused and ready to prove something to people that, hey, we're still the defending national champions. On top of that, the fact that they've kind of slid out of that top of the playoff race for a lot of people might have taken some of the pressure off of this team. A lot of has been made about whether or not there was just too much pressure on Clemson so far early in the season after that dominating performance in the title game last year. And that's a fair point to make. I'm not sure whether or not that's the case, but we'll see how that plays out. Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence was rumored to have some type of shoulder injury. Not sure whether or not that was true. Dabo Swinney came out with that fiery press conference when he was asked about it, but you wonder that bye week could have helped Lawrence recover as well. And as a fan of college football, you really want to see all their teams at their best. And if this Clemson offense comes out playing their best as we enter late October, early November, it'll be really a treat to watch for all college football fans. I just think in this game, 27 is a lot to cover against a team as talented as Florida State is. The Seminoles have been playing a little bit better this season. So while I think Clemson puts forth their best performance of the year, I think the Noles keep it within 27. I like the Tigers 41-16 on Saturday afternoon. Continuing on now to a primetime matchup that's kind of flying under the radar considering we have so many big games on this Saturday. The Minnesota Golden Gophers host the Nebraska Cornhuskers as a 7.5-point home favorite for this 7:30 Eastern kickoff over on FS1. Well, the key for me in this game is the health of quarterback Adrian Martinez for Nebraska. He has an uncertain status on whether or not he's going to play in this game. If he's not able to go, I just can't get myself to pick Nebraska to win this football game. I was really considering picking them if he had been cleared to play during the week, but that hasn't happened. So for now, I'm going to pick Minnesota. While I think Nebraska's rushing attack is going to be able to really test this much improved and pretty solid Minnesota defense, I just think with the potential for inclement weather, that plays into Minnesota's hands. They win these games that are by pretty close margins, and they really love to run the football. I think that plays well for them in this one. I like Minnesota, but I think it's closer than people think. Golden Gophers win 23-20 in a Big Ten West matchup. Continuing on with another primetime matchup. This one's over on NBC at 7:30 Eastern Time as the Notre Dame Fighting Irish host the USC Trojans as these two renew their rivalry. The Fighting Irish are an 11-point home favorite. Well, USC had that rough loss against Washington in the eyes of many their last time out. Now they had a bye week to regroup, and quarterback Kedon Slovis is back to being the starter after fully healing from the concussion he suffered against Utah. I think that's good news for the Trojans, as I believe he is a significant upgrade from Matt Fink. Also, Matt Fink and this USC team really struggled with turnovers against Washington, and that turned that game a lot more upside down than it really was. If you look back and look into the box score, USC actually outgained the Huskies in that football game, which is surprising considering Washington looked to be in full control pretty much throughout. So with Kedon Slovis coming back, there's some optimism that maybe this USC team will avoid turnovers and put forth a good performance against the Fighting Irish. A word of caution, though, is that Kedon Slovis was the starting quarterback when USC went on the road to Provo to take on BYU, and they also had turnover problems in that game. Now, you could make the excuse that that was Kedon Slovis' first road game as a true freshman, and you could buy that, but I'm just not sure. This USC team hasn't put it together yet on the road. So that's the reason I can't pick them to win this game. But I still think this USC passing attack will find some success against the Notre Dame secondary that's really banged up right now. So I believe this is a lot closer than the experts predict. I'm going with the Fighting Irish in a good one, 27-24 on Saturday night. Another primetime matchup. This one's over on ABC as the Penn State Nittany Lions travel to Kinnick Stadium at night. That's always a scary proposition for the road team. The Nittany Lions are a 3.5-point road favorite over these Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa had a lot of issues blocking the Michigan pass rush last week, and I think Penn State is capable of exploiting the Hawkeyes' offensive line if they weren't able to clean up those issues during this past week. Penn State has historically been a really good team at getting after the quarterback under James Franklin, and with Yetur Gross-Matos as a rush end, they're capable of really wreaking havoc on Iowa. Now, this Penn State offense has really been untested so far this season. This is a really good Iowa defense. Kinnick at night is going to be an intimidating atmosphere for this young Nittany Lions team if they don't get off to a good start, I think. But I think Penn State's just the better football team right now. They're more talented. And I believe coming into this season that Penn State was a dark horse playoff contender. And you're starting to see a little bit of chatter among the national media that if Penn State can get by this Iowa team with that whiteout primetime game against Michigan next Saturday night, that maybe, just maybe, Penn State could work their way into the playoff mix. I'm not ready to go that far yet, but I really like their talent, and I think Penn State goes on the road and wins in a low-scoring game against the Hawkeyes. I got the Nittany Lions 16-10 on Saturday night. I'm going to get to this one real quick here before I get to the game of the week, but the Washington Huskies travel to Tucson to take on the Arizona Wildcats. Washington is a 6.5-point road favorite for this 11 p.m. Eastern kickoff on FS1. So it's some Pac-12 after dark, always scary for a road team that's favored. But I just think right now Washington's coming off of that loss to Stanford, which was kind of embarrassing. They really weren't able to get anything going in that second half. Defensively, this Huskies team isn't what they used to be. But I think quarterback Jacob Eason is going to be able to find success against this Arizona pass defense that's been pretty porous so far this season. So I'm going to take Washington on the road 30-23. But I am a bit worried that this is their second straight road game, and they have Oregon in a big game at home next Saturday. So it's a tricky spot, but I'm taking the Huskies. And now, as I mentioned, I'll get to the game of the week. It's shaping up to be a fantastic atmosphere for a college football game as Death Valley and Tiger Stadium will come alive at 8 p.m. Eastern on ESPN as the LSU Tigers are a 13.5-point favorite as they welcome in the Florida Gators for a top 10 matchup of undefeated SEC teams. This is going to be a great game, I think. I'm a bit worried, though, about this spot for Florida because Florida's coming off of that emotional win over a top 10 Auburn team last Saturday, And they come into this game against LSU now, second straight game against a top 10 team. Their rushing attack really hasn't gotten anything going this season. I know LaMichael Pirine had that big run against Auburn, but outside of that, didn't get much going in that game. And their quarterback, Kyle Trask, got banged up against Auburn. And you have to wonder if he'll at all be limited. I know he'll play, but will he be limited in terms of what he can do when he's out on the field? That said, this Florida defense is terrific, and they really weren't tested much by Auburn. I think they still have plenty in the tank for this football game on that side of the ball, and they are going to be the toughest test Joe Burrow and this LSU offense have seen so far this season. I do think this LSU offense is a lot better than what we've seen in recent years, despite the fact they really haven't played anybody. Texas's secondary has been beyond bad, but they do a lot of things in terms of isolating matchups that translate well. So I think this LSU offense is certainly up to what people have been talking it as, but I think Florida's defense is really good as well. Jabari Zuniga expected back to help rush the passer. Of course, you have the dynamic duo of Marco Wilson and CJ Henderson. It's just going to be a fantastic battle to watch this LSU offense go up against this Florida defense. The chess match there is going to be off the charts. The atmosphere in this stadium is going to be off the charts. Tiger Stadium and these night games comes alive in ways you don't see in other sports. And I just think that in this tremendously massive top 10 showdown, the LSU Tigers will be urged on by their home crowd. And under the lights on Saturday night, the LSU Tigers will knock off the Florida Gators 26-20.